People think being a professional whale hunter in Las Vegas is all glitz and glamour, like I'm some suave player coaxing high rollers to the tables. It's not entirely untrue, but there's a lot more grit to it. My name's Lorenzo, but everyone calls me Enzo. I work for the Manor, one of the most exclusive high-roller casinos on the Strip. We don't cater to just anyone. Our clientele are billionaires, oil magnates, tech tycoons, people who consider losing millions just another Tuesday. My job is simple on paper. Find the whales, reel them in, and keep them entertained. I get them the best suites, the finest liquor, and occasionally, the kind of company that doesn't come cheap. Most nights, I end up babysitting drunk egos and mediating arguments over whose yacht is longer. But last night, everything changed. It started with a call from Mrs. Smoke. She's the Manor's manager, a steel-nerved woman with a voice like whiskey and sandpaper. She's seen it all and doesn't flinch, not even when a whale loses big and starts trashing the place. When she called me to her office at 10 p.m., I knew it wasn't just about greeting a new guest. Inside, she was puffing on one of her expensive cigars, staring out over the neon-lit city. "Got a special one for you tonight," she said, barely looking my way. I nodded, waiting. Name's document friend of Wings. My stomach dropped. Wings was a notorious whale, old money, ruthless, and one of our biggest spenders. If Doc was a friend of his, this wouldn't be a simple night. Doc's looking for something different, Mrs. Smoke continued. "You're going to take him to the Folter room." I frowned. I haven't heard of that one. Mrs. Smoke turned, her cold, dark eyes finally meeting mine. "That's because it's new. Underground. Strictly invite only. You're not just babysitting tonight. You're hosting." That wasn't standard. Normally, I'd just be making sure the guy was happy at the tables, not guiding him to some secret event. I wanted to ask more, but Mrs. Smoke wasn't the type to explain. Doc was waiting in the VIP lounge, tall, thin, gray hair slicked back like a villain from an old movie. Wings was next to him, already 2 drinks in and loudly proclaiming how Vegas had gone soft with its family-friendly vibe. We exchanged pleasantries, and Doc's handshake was cold, his fingers long and bony. "Wings tells me you're the guy who can make things happen," he said with a tight-lipped smile. I forced a grin. "That's the idea. You gentlemen ready for something unique?" Wings slapped Doc on the back. "You're gonna love this. Real old-school Vegas. None of that sanitized crap." We took a private elevator to the basement. Mrs. Smoke had given me a key card and a set of vague instructions. I led them down a dark hallway until we reached a steel door marked only by a red symbol, a crude depiction of a saw. A bouncer nodded at me, unlocked the door, and waved us inside. The room beyond was dimly lit, lined with velvet drapes, and filled with about a dozen people seated around a small stage. At the center was a chair bolted to the floor, surrounded by plastic sheeting. The smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the air. Wings nudged document, "Told you this was the real deal." My stomach twisted as a man in a butcher's apron stepped onto the stage. He was burly, tattooed, and holding a large cleaver. 2 more men dragged in 3 captives, blindfolded, gagged, their clothes tattered. They were chained to rings in the floor, kneeling like sacrifices. A woman with slicked back hair, wearing a tailored suit, addressed the audience. "Welcome to the Folter room. Tonight's event, endurance and pain. Place your bets on who will withstand the most. Loser forfeits a foot." Doc leaned in, intrigued. "Is this real?" Wings just grinned, lighting a cigar. "You better believe it." I couldn't move. I wanted to walk out, say this wasn't what I signed up for, but I was rooted to the spot. The audience whispered as bets were placed, money exchanging hands. The butcher approached the first captive and slammed the cleaver down, just missing the man's toes. The captive screamed, muffled by his gag. The audience laughed. Doc leaned forward, eyes sparkling with fascination. For the next hour, they tortured those poor souls, whipping, cutting, burning. Each one fought to endure, but eventually, one collapsed, whimpering. The woman in the suit nodded to the butcher, and he calmly unshackled the loser, forced him into the chair, and strapped his leg down. The cleaver came down slowly, deliberately. The sound of bone snapping, the muffled scream, I couldn't watch. I turned my head, but Doc and Wings were mesmerized. The crowd applauded as the butcher held up the severed foot like a prize. When it was over, the survivors were dragged off, and the lights dimmed. Wings clapped Doc on the shoulder. "What did I tell you? Nothing like it anywhere else. Doc nodded, clearly pleased. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the metallic taste in my mouth. Back in the elevator, Doc couldn't stop praising the experience. Wing slapped my back. Good work, Enzo. You found the real Vegas for us. I forced a smile, but inside I was screaming. Back at the lobby, I headed straight for Mrs. Smoke's office, but she wasn't there. Instead, on my desk at the front, I found a sealed envelope. Inside was a note in her sharp handwriting. You did well tonight. Doc's impressed. Next week, you'll be hosting in the Adderlass room. Get ready. Smoke. I didn't know what Adderlass meant, so I looked it up on my phone. German for bloodletting. My stomach clenched. I sat down, feeling like the walls were closing in. I thought I knew this city. I thought I knew my job. But now I realized I was just a puppet in something far darker than I ever imagined. And next week, I would be leading more people into whatever horror the Adderlass room held. It's taken me a long time to work up the courage to share this, but I figure I need to do it before it's too late. I'm not looking for sympathy or answers. I just want someone to remember me as a whole person, not the broken shell I've become. It all started in 2012. I took a trip to Las Vegas with some friends, the kind of wild, reckless weekend where memories blur and bad decisions blend into each other. We did the usual: casinos, drinks, a few shows. I barely remember most of it, except for one night where I got separated from the group. I ended up at a small, rundown casino on the outskirts. The name escapes me now, but I remember the flashing red neon sign barely hanging on. I was pretty drunk, playing blackjack with a guy who kept laughing at his own losing hands. At some point, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Sometimes, you gotta give to get." I laughed it off, thinking he was talking about gambling. I don't even remember leaving the place or how I got back to my hotel. The next morning, I woke up with a raging headache and noticed something strange. My right pinky finger was gone. Just gone. There was no blood, no pain, nothing. The skin where it used to be was smooth, almost like it had never existed. My friends thought I was messing with them until they saw it themselves. We called the police, but they didn't take me seriously. I didn't know what to tell them. There was no wound, no signs of surgery, just an absence. For a while, I convinced myself it was a bizarre accident, some drunken mishap I couldn't remember. Life went on, and I did my best to adapt. I thought maybe it was just a freak incident until the next year, on the exact same date. I woke up to find my left ear gone. Once again, no blood, no pain, just smooth skin where my ear used to be. I was sober this time, staying with my girlfriend at her place, but neither of us heard or saw anything unusual. I checked the doors and windows, all locked from the inside. I even set up a cheap security camera aimed at the bed, but the footage showed nothing, just me sleeping soundly all night. The third year, I started to panic weeks before the date. I locked myself in a hotel room with no windows, bolted the door, and stayed awake the whole night with a loaded gun. I must have dozed off at some point because I woke up to find my left hand missing. The gun was still on the nightstand, completely disassembled, laid out in neat pieces. That's when I knew this wasn't just some random act of violence. It was deliberate. Someone or something was targeting me, and nothing I did could stop it. Over the years, I tried everything. I moved to a new city, traveled internationally, changed my appearance, and cut off all contact with my old friends. No matter where I was or how prepared I thought I was, every year I woke up with another piece of me gone. In 2016, it was my tongue. I woke up gagging, unable to speak, with a numbness in my mouth. I looked in the mirror to see my tongue simply gone, the inside of my mouth healed over as if it had never existed. 2017, my left foot vanished, leaving me hobbling and dependent on crutches. By 2018, I was missing my right eye. I couldn't even cry properly after that one, just sat in my room, trying to understand why this was happening. I even checked myself into a psychiatric hospital, thinking maybe I was doing this to myself somehow. But the night of the anniversary, even in a locked, padded room, with staff checking on me every hour, I woke up missing 3 fingers from my left hand. My life fell apart. I lost my job, my relationship, and most of my friends. I couldn't blame them. I was paranoid, erratic, convinced that something was hunting me. But every attempt to catch the perpetrator ended the same way. Nothing on the cameras, no signs of entry, no sound. Just another body part gone, always clean and smooth like it had never existed. Last year, I tried something different. I left a note on my chest as I slept. Why? It was my last hope to understand. I woke up the next morning, missing half my right foot. The note had been turned over, with a single response written on the back. Why not? Now it's 2025, and I've run out of ideas. The anniversary is coming up in a few days. I don't know what's left for me to lose, but I have a feeling it might be the last. I've thought about ending it myself, but the fear that whatever is doing this would somehow find me even in death keeps me paralyzed. I'm writing this down because I want someone to know what happened, in case I vanish completely. I need someone to remember that I was once a whole person, not this collection of parts, slowly disappearing year by year. I used to believe that if I could figure out the why, it would stop. But the truth is, I'm not sure there is a reason. Maybe I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe I made some kind of bargain without realizing it. Or maybe, sometimes, bad luck just picks a person and never lets go. If you ever find yourself in a rundown casino on the outskirts of Vegas and a stranger offers you advice about luck, don't listen. Don't take the chance. Because some deals don't just cost you money, they cost you pieces of yourself. Tonight, I'll sit here and wait. I'm too tired to fight it anymore. I just hope that when it's over, there's still enough of me left to remember who I used to be. Working the night shift at a hotel in Las Vegas isn't as glamorous as it sounds. My name's Nick, and I've been a front desk clerk at a mid-tier hotel for about 6 months now. The place has been around since the 1920s, and it shows. Peeling wallpaper, creaky elevators, and a lobby that still smells faintly of stale cigars. They've been renovating for weeks, trying to spruce it up and make it less of a relic. But honestly, I think it'll take more than new carpets and fresh paint. The third floor has been completely closed off for renovations, which means no guests, no staff, nothing. They blocked it off with plastic sheets and posted warning signs at the stairwells and elevator. So when I got a call from room 323 at around 2 a.m., I figured it was just a glitch. I answered out of habit. "Front desk, this is Nick. How may I assist you?" A woman's voice came through, shaky and distressed. "Please, you have to help me. I'm stuck in my room. It's so dark." I frowned and checked the screen again. Room 323, clear as day. "Ma'am, the third floor is closed for renovations. Are you sure you're in 323? She started to cry. "I can't get out. The door won't open. Please, hurry." Something about her tone sent a chill down my spine. I grabbed the master key and headed to the security office to check the cameras. The feed for the third floor was black, like the cameras had been disconnected. I debated calling my manager, but honestly, he never answered his phone this late. So, against my better judgment, I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the stairs. The elevator was shut down for maintenance, and I wasn't about to get stuck between floors. The stairwell was darker than usual. One of the fluorescent lights was flickering, casting weird shadows. By the time I reached the third floor, I was already sweating. I pulled back the plastic sheet and stepped into the hallway. Dust hung in the air, and the dim emergency lighting barely illuminated the corridor. As I walked down the hall, I started to hear faint music, something jazzy and upbeat, like from an old phonograph. It seemed to be coming from room 323. I hesitated, wondering if maybe the workers had left something behind. I approached the door and knocked. "Ma'am, this is Nick from the front desk. Are you okay?" Silence. Then, just as I was about to knock again, I heard the music swell, louder, almost deafening, and then cut out abruptly. A male voice from inside said, "Come on in, buddy. Join the party." My hand froze on the door handle. I couldn't remember ever feeling this uneasy before. I pushed down the handle, and to my surprise, the door swung open. Inside, the room was dark except for a deep, red light glowing from the far corner. I called out, "Hello." Maniacal laughter erupted from the room, loud and echoing. I could feel my legs trembling, but I forced myself to take a step inside. That's when I heard two distinct whispers, one on each side of me, saying, "Come in. Stay a while." I bolted. I didn't even bother closing the door behind me. I tore down the stairs, nearly tripping over my own feet, and burst into the lobby. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I immediately called the police, rambling about someone being trapped and weird noises. They took about 15 minutes to show up, and when they arrived, I led them back to room 323. The door was closed now. One of the officers, a guy named Daniels who often patrolled around the hotel, looked at me skeptically before unlocking the door. They went in with their flashlights, and I waited, trying to make sense of what I'd experienced. After a few minutes, Daniels came back out and looked at me like I was crazy. "Nick, there's nothing in there. No signs of anyone. Place is covered in dust. You sure you didn't just imagine it?" I wanted to protest, but I couldn't explain what I'd heard and seen. The officers eventually left after warning me not to call again unless it was an actual emergency. I spent the rest of the night trying to focus on work, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Around 4 a.m., I noticed something on the front desk counter. An envelope, old and yellowed, addressed simply to the front desk. I picked it up, and my heart dropped when I saw the room number scrawled on the back, 323. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded twice. I hesitated, but finally unfolded it. In neat, cursive handwriting, it read, "Maybe next time." I felt nauseous. I shoved the note in my pocket and tried to act normal, but I kept glancing at the elevators, half expecting something to come down. When my shift ended, I practically sprinted to my car. I couldn't sleep for days. When I finally worked up the courage to tell my manager, he laughed it off, saying the old place had plenty of ghost stories and I'd just let my imagination run wild. But I know what I heard, what I saw. The weirdest part? I started asking around, trying to find out if anyone had stayed in 323 before the renovations. An older housekeeper, Maria, told me in hushed tones that the room used to be permanently booked by a woman named Marion Kennedy, back in the 1920s. She was found dead in that room, supposedly after some kind of party gone wrong. Maria warned me to never answer calls from that room again. I quit 2 weeks later. Sometimes I still think about that night, and I wonder, if I'd gone deeper into that room, would I have ever made it out? I hadn't planned on telling my son the truth. Some stories aren't meant to be shared, especially with someone you want to protect. But it's getting late for me. The doctors gave me months, maybe weeks, and I don't want to leave without him knowing who his grandmother really was. We're sitting in the dim light of my hospital room, his face tense, like he knows I'm about to drop something heavy. I clear my throat, unsure how to start, but he's always been a good listener, patient even when the words don't come out right. "It's about your grandmother," I begin. He nods, confused, because all he knows is the vague story I've told him his whole life, that she was a singer in Las Vegas, glamorous and troubled, and that she died young. I never filled in the gaps because I didn't want him carrying the same nightmares. But he's a man now, and I guess he deserves the truth. My sister and I were only 6 when we first met her. Our biological mother died in a car accident, and our father was long gone. They put us in a group home, and for a while, it seemed that's where we'd stay. Then she showed up. She was tall and elegant, with a voice like velvet and a perfume that filled the whole room. She didn't seem like someone who would take in kids, let alone 2 at once, but she adopted us together. She liked to be called Mama Marlene. At first, it was paradise. She had a house on the outskirts of Vegas, one of those old, sprawling places with high ceilings and peeling wallpaper. She didn't care that it looked worn down because, as she often said, it's got soul. She kept us in nice clothes, fed us fancy dinners, and sometimes even let us play in the room where she kept her piano. At night, she'd sing us to sleep with old jazz numbers, her voice rich and haunting. But there were odd things too. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night to hear her talking to herself, or so I thought. She'd be in the hallway, whispering in low, urgent tones. I once peeked out to see her standing by the wall, almost as if she were talking to the wallpaper itself. One night, I crept out of bed and saw her at the piano. She wasn't playing, just sitting, staring at the keys, muttering about keeping the lock. I asked her what she was doing, and she jumped, laughing it off, saying she was just thinking about new songs. It was around that time that the luck really started to turn. Mama Marlene went from playing in seedy lounges to being featured at bigger, classier joints. Money came easier, and she stopped worrying about the rent. We moved into a bigger house, one with less charm but more room for her growing collection of expensive dresses and jewelry. But the house itself was wrong. It started with noises, scratching behind the walls, the soft thud of something heavy being dragged. I thought it was rats, but Marlene didn't let anyone call an exterminator. She'd get angry, saying, "You don't understand. This house knows me." One night, I woke to the sound of laughing, low, guttural, and harsh, echoing through the halls. I tiptoed to my sister's room, but she was asleep, oblivious. I followed the sound to the basement door. It was cracked open, and I saw her down there, holding something wrapped in a blanket, whispering to the shadows. The next morning, there was a newspaper on the kitchen table about a baby missing from a nearby hospital. I asked her about the basement, but she just smiled, ruffled my hair, and told me to mind my business. A few weeks later, the luck soured. Marlene's voice began to give out on stage, cracking mid-song. She started drinking more, snapping at us over little things. The noise from the walls became constant, like something was scraping to get out. Then the nanny went missing. Her name was Celia, a sweet woman from Mexico who made us tamales on weekends. One day, she just didn't show up. Marlene didn't seem to care, just muttering about fixing things. I heard her downstairs again that night, arguing with someone in a hushed, frantic tone. The night it all fell apart, I woke to the sound of the piano playing itself. I crept out of my room and saw Marlene dragging something heavy wrapped in sheets toward the basement. She was crying, begging, "Take it. Just take it and leave me be." The basement door slammed shut, and I heard the laughter again, louder and more distorted, like it was mocking her. Then the fire started. I grabbed my sister and ran. We barely made it out before the flames took over. The firefighters found Marlene in the basement, curled up and mumbling incoherently. The police couldn't make sense of her story, something about keeping the music alive and paying the price. She was committed to a facility, and we were placed in foster care. A few months later, she died. They said her heart just stopped, but I knew it wasn't that simple. I saw it in her face the last time I visited. The wide, white eyes, like they'd seen something horrible, something that wouldn't let her go. Now, years later, I still think about that house. Sometimes I wonder if the luck she found was never really hers to keep, or if the shadow with the wide eyes was always just waiting for her debt to come due. My son is quiet, absorbing the story. I try to smile, but my body aches, reminding me of the cancer that's eating away at me. I'm not afraid of dying. What scares me is what comes after, the idea that something might be waiting for me on the other side. The nurse comes in to check my vitals, and my son squeezes my hand. He doesn't know what to say, and I can't blame him. It's a story no one would believe. As the nurse adjusts my fore, I catch a glimpse of the hallway. A dark shape flickers just at the edge of my vision, and for a moment, I swear I see wide eyes staring back at me. I blink, and it's gone. Maybe it's just a trick of the mind, or maybe it's the same thing that took Marlene finally coming for me. I don't know, but if it is, I hope it takes me quietly. I've had enough of fear. I've never been a lucky guy. In fact, most of my life has been a string of bad decisions and even worse outcomes. My wife left me, my job let me go, and I was down to my last few $100 when I decided to take a desperate trip to Las Vegas. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could turn things around. The first night there, I was sitting at a dingy bar on the strip, nursing a cheap beer and trying to map out some sort of game plan. That's when this guy sat next to me. He was older, gray beard, tattered jacket. Looked like someone who'd been on the losing side of luck more than a few times himself. He didn't say much at first, just ordered a whiskey and sat there, tapping his fingers on the bar. Eventually, he looked over and said, "You look like you could use a change of fortune." I just shrugged and muttered something about how Vegas wasn't really living up to its promises. That's when he slid something across the bar toward me. A small, round, wooden casino chip. It looked old and worn, but the engraving on it was still clear, a simple clover in the center. "Take it," he said, his voice low. "It'll give you a night you'll never forget." I didn't know what to think, but something about his tone, half warning, half encouragement, made me curious. I picked it up, examining the way it seemed almost warm in my hand. By the time I looked back up, the guy was gone, and the bartender swore he hadn't seen anyone sitting next to me. Figuring I had nothing to lose, I went to the nearest casino and dropped the chip on a blackjack table. The dealer just looked at it, confused, but didn't object when I placed it next to my bet. To my shock, I hit blackjack, twice in a row. Then I moved to the roulette wheel, red 7. Another win. Slot machines, jackpot. Within an hour, I'd turned $20 into a few grand. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't believe my luck. I took my winnings, pocketed the wooden chip, and left before the house caught on. That night, I was walking back to my cheap motel when a guy jumped me in an alley, knife out, demanding my cash. Instinct took over, and I swung my backpack at him. but I didn't have to. The guy's foot slipped on some loose gravel, and he went down hard, hitting his head on a dumpster. Out cold. I didn't even stick around to see if he was breathing. I just ran. The next day, I kept testing the chip's power. I made bets on horses, coin flips, anything I could think of. Every time, I came out on top. I should have been thrilled. But that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the mugger's fall. The way his head hit the metal with that sickening thud. Was that really just a coincidence? My paranoia started creeping in. I was careful with every step I took, afraid that some consequence was lurking around the corner. Then I got the bright idea to take a flight out of Vegas, maybe distance myself from whatever curse or blessing the chip held. I barely made it to the airport, and as I boarded the plane, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Just before takeoff, I heard a loud pop from one of the engines. The crew announced a delay due to mechanical issues. As we deboard, I watched them wheel out the engine on a cart. The thing was fried. My hands were shaking as I took a cab back to the hotel. That's when I realized it wasn't just good luck. It was survival. Any time I should have been hurt or killed, the chip intervened. But the way it did it was brutal. A mugger smashing his head, an engine malfunction. The chip didn't just protect me. It hurt others to keep me safe. I needed to get rid of it. I drove out of the city, my mind racing, trying to think of how to destroy something that felt almost supernatural. I pulled onto a deserted stretch of road and hurled the chip into the desert. It was over, I thought. But as I got back into my car, I felt something warm in my pocket. I reached in, and there it was, the wooden chip, smooth as ever. My panic hit an all-time high. I tried burning it, burying it, even throwing it into the river. It always came back. I knew then that it wasn't something I could just get rid of. It had chosen me. My mind started spiraling. I hadn't eaten or slept in days, convinced that something terrible would happen if I let my guard down. Then, one night while driving aimlessly, I lost control. I don't remember how it happened. Maybe I dozed off. The car flipped 3 times before landing in a ditch. I was awake the whole time, feeling every bone snap and twist. When it finally stopped, I couldn't move. I laid there for what felt like hours before help arrived. Paramedics pulled me out, and one of them whispered, "How are you still alive?" I didn't have an answer. I was paralyzed from the waist down, but alive. When they loaded me into the ambulance, I felt something fall out of my shirt pocket. One of the EMTs picked it up, that damned wooden chip. He looked at it curiously before slipping it into his own pocket. As I was wheeled away, I tried to warn him, but my voice was weak. I couldn't make him understand. Now, I'm stuck in a hospital bed, reliving every moment, every decision that led to this. The chip is gone now, moved on to someone else. I don't know where or who has it, but I just hope they figure it out before it's too late. If a stranger ever offers you a small, wooden chip in Vegas, don't take it. No matter how desperate you are. It's not luck. It's survival, and it demands a cost. I moved to Las Vegas 3 years ago, chasing a dream that felt both thrilling and reckless at the same time. I was going to make it as a DJ. I wasn't aiming for superstardom, just enough to play the clubs, make connections, and live the kind of life I always imagined. A little chaotic, a lot of fun, and just enough money to keep the party going. After a year of playing smaller gigs, I finally landed a semi-regular spot at one of the newer clubs on the Strip. It wasn't a big name place, but it had that underground feel and enough hype to draw in decent crowds. The pay wasn't great, but I didn't care. I was finally doing what I loved, and the city lights felt like they were shining just for me. One thing I noticed right off the bat was how tight-knit the club staff seemed. Bartenders, bouncers, even the cleaning crew, all of them seemed to be in on some inside joke. I figured it was just that Vegas camaraderie, people who've been in the scene too long and think of outsiders as temporary fixtures. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched whenever I spoke to women. It wasn't just the usual curiosity of staff eyeing who might cause trouble. It was more intense, almost calculated. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. I wasn't exactly sober most nights, and paranoia comes easy when you're juggling a mix of exhaustion, adrenaline, and a few drinks. But then I started noticing a pattern. Every time I struck up a conversation with a girl, 1 or 2 of the staff would find a reason to be nearby. Cleaning an already spotless table, rearranging liquor bottles behind the bar, or just standing with their backs turned, but still close enough to listen. One night, after my set, I was catching my breath at the bar when this girl, Kat, came up to me. She had that carefree tourist vibe, messy hair, high heels, and eyes that sparkled like she was already half lost in the night. We started talking, and just as she was about to say something, I noticed one of the bartenders staring at her reflection in the mirror behind the bar. His eyes didn't leave her, even as he pretended to count cash. Kat noticed too. She leaned in, whispered, "Your friend behind the bar?" Kinda creepy. I nodded, trying to brush it off, but my stomach tightened. A few minutes later, she excused herself to go to the bathroom. I waited around for a while, but she never came back. I didn't think much of it then. People vanish into the night in Vegas all the time. But then it happened again. Different girl, same weird vibe from the staff. I was chatting with Lena, a local who worked at one of the hotels, when a security guy hovered nearby, fixing a wall fixture that didn't need fixing. Lena glanced at him, laughed it off, and we kept talking. An hour later, when I went to get another drink, she was just gone. I asked a few people, but no one remembered seeing her leave. By the time it happened the third time, I knew it wasn't just a coincidence. I had been talking to a dancer named Marissa when two bartenders practically flanked us, both wiping down the counter like their lives depended on it. Marissa joked about feeling like we were being spied on, and I laughed it off, but my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. She went to the restroom and didn't come back. I tried texting her the next day, but her number was disconnected. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversations, the glances, the way the staff seemed to monitor me. I considered quitting, but the money was finally good, and I didn't want to go back to square one. Then I met Miranda. She wasn't like the other girls. She seemed more cautious, more aware. We talked about music, about how weird the club felt sometimes. Then she asked me if I'd noticed how the staff acted around me. My heart pounded, and I nodded. Miranda said she'd seen girls leave the club with some of the staff before and never come back. I asked her what she meant, but she clammed up, looking genuinely scared. We decided to leave together. As we walked out, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. I suggested we get into my car and just drive. She agreed, and as we reached the parking lot, I swear I saw one of the bouncers watching us from the shadows. I fumbled for my keys, and just as I unlocked the car, everything went black. I woke up the next morning in the driver's seat, parked in the lot, with a pounding headache. Miranda was gone, and I couldn't remember a thing after reaching the car. My wallet, phone, and everything else were untouched. I drove home in a daze, half convinced it was all just a nightmare. I never saw Miranda again. I asked around the club, but no one seemed to remember her. A few weeks later, I quit the gig and took a job at a smaller venue downtown. I still think about those girls. Sometimes I wonder if I should go to the police, but what would I say? That a bunch of girls just vanished after talking to me? That the staff might be involved in something dark? I haven't been back to that club since. I hear it's still open, still drawing in tourists and newcomers, just like I once was. I've been a Postmates delivery driver in Las Vegas for a few years now, mostly working the night shift. There's good money in it, especially with the party crowd, but lately, things have been different. I'm not one to scare easily, but some nights, the city doesn't feel right. It started about 3 weeks ago. I was driving down a stretch of road on the outskirts of town, where the city fades into the desert. Around 2 a.m., I spotted a car parked on the shoulder, facing away from the desert, just sitting there, headlights on. I slowed down, thinking someone might need help, but there was no one in sight. The weird part was that the car looked abandoned, dust coating the windows and no sign of movement. As I passed by, a chill ran down my spine when I noticed 2 more cars in the same position, spaced out along the road, all facing away from the desert. It wasn't until I was driving back through the area an hour later that I noticed something even stranger. One of the cars was gone, but the others remained, still facing the same direction. I couldn't explain why, but I felt a growing unease, as if those cars were deliberately left that way for a reason. I didn't think much of it at the time. People do weird stuff, and it's Vegas. But that was just the beginning. A few nights later, I was delivering to an address on the edge of town. The order was from one of those massive mansion-like homes that seemed out of place next to the barren lots. As I pulled up, I noticed several cars parked in the driveway, all high-end. I expected some rowdy party, but when I knocked on the door, it swung open without anyone greeting me. Cautiously, I stepped inside, calling out. The place was spotless, almost too perfect, like a model home. Then, out of nowhere, these women appeared, 3 of them, stunningly beautiful, dressed like they'd just come from a fashion show. They glided over, almost in sync, and greeted me with the same unsettlingly perfect smile. One of them, a tall blonde, took the food, barely acknowledging me, while the other two just stood there, watching. I felt like I was being examined, and the air was thick with something I couldn't place. I tried to make small talk, commenting on how quiet the place seemed for a party house. The blonde just tilted her head slightly, as if the concept of a party was foreign to her. Before I could even ask for a tip, the door was gently closed in my face. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been in some kind of weird trap. It was like stepping into a movie set where nothing quite matched reality. I kept telling myself I was just overthinking it. That feeling didn't last long. A few nights later, I got a ping to deliver to a house on the outskirts again. This time, it was an older, run-down place. When I arrived, the entire street was silent. I knocked, but no one answered. Just as I was about to leave, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a dark hallway stretching into the house. Something about that hallway felt wrong. It wasn't just dark, it seemed to absorb light. I couldn't see the end of it, and the air felt colder near the doorway. Then I heard it, faint, almost like a whisper, coming from deep inside. My skin crawled, and without thinking, I dropped the food on the porch and bolted to my car. As I sped away, I glanced back and saw the door swing shut as if someone had been standing there the whole time, just watching. Later that night, I sat at a 24-hour diner to clear my head. Another driver I knew, Jeff, plopped down in the seat across from me. He looked shaken. I asked him what was up, and he mentioned delivering to a mansion earlier, the same one I'd been to. He said the women there seemed off, like they were rehearsing being human. We shared stories, and his account gave me chills. He swore that one of the women tried to get him to come inside, insisting he have a drink. When he declined, she kept repeating, "Just one drink," with that same unsettling smile. The most unnerving encounter happened just last night. I was delivering to a motel on the strip. I parked around the back and saw it, an SUV parked at an odd angle, the hood still slightly smoking. The entire front of it looked charred, like it had been in a fire. I remembered seeing the same SUV a week before, in a completely different part of town, with the same damage. As I walked past it, a man stepped out from behind the SUV, tall and thin with a grimy baseball cap. His face looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. He didn't say anything, just stared at me as I walked by. I picked up my pace, and when I glanced back, he was gone. Back in my car, I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was just tired and seeing patterns where there weren't any. But then my phone buzzed with another order. When I checked the address, my stomach dropped. It was that mansion again, the one with the women. This time, I didn't want to go, but the payout was too good to pass up. When I arrived, the house was completely dark. I knocked, and the door slowly opened, revealing the same blonde from before. Only this time she looked disheveled, like she hadn't slept in days. I handed her the food, but she didn't move to take it. Instead, she whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." Before I could respond, someone pulled her away from the door, and it slammed shut. I didn't stick around to see what happened next. On my way home, I passed that stretch of road leading out of the city, and there they were, those cars again, all facing away from the desert. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before, handprints smeared on the windows, as if people had been desperately trying to escape. I don't know what's going on in this city at night. I'm not even sure I want to know. But one thing's for sure, I'm never taking the night shift again.